What did you see from him, not just in this game, but overall this season, and comparing him to like the rest of the league?
It's hard for me to say if he's the best defensive player in the league. He's certainly a great player.
Let me put it this way. Has he been one of the best defensive players you've seen on tape this season?
I would say at his best, yes, for sure. For sure. Because he's a dominant force when he's at his best. Yes.
Cool.
It's interesting, and I always look at this when I watch the Eagles tape to see what the O-line, the opposing coaches do. Early in the game, the first number of third downs, they did not slide to Carter. They actually slid to Milton Williams on the first two or three third downs,
Wow.
which I thought, was pretty interesting, and
Yeah.
they signal blocked Carter.
With the injury to the Commandos line there, would you assume that they're going to base their game plan on how to stop Carter?
There's multiple ways to do that, and I think first they'll wait and see what the Commanders do, because you don't have to deal with him on every play depending on what the play call is. They may do some things that are slightly different from what they do. It's really interesting. The first possession of the game, Williams ran for 20 yards, and it was a trap. It was what we call wham trap. And Adam, I know I mentioned that run when we did our pregame show. That's a really good run concept against a penetrating one gap 4D line front. And they had great success because they trapped Carter and they whammed Davis. And Kyron Williams ran for 20 yards. They never ran that play again in the entire game, which really surprised me.
What do you think are some things that Fangio can do in terms of dealing with kind of no huddle? And do you think that with them having a lot of success with no huddle, that this will be a game that Bryce Huff has to play because of, getting the rotational pass rushers, keeping them fresh?
Well, just so everybody understands, the Commanders played more no huddle than any team in the league by a wide margin. About 60% of their offensive snaps this year have come out of no huddle. And again, there's multiple forms of no huddle. You can go up to the line of scrimmage and snap the ball quickly. You can go up to the line of scrimmage, snap it when there's 20 seconds on the play clock, or you can stand there and wait and snap it when there's 2 seconds on the play clock. So there's multiple forms of no huddle. The Eagles will be prepared for it. So what will happen is they'll probably have some automatic checks because no team wants to get caught in just having to play the same kind of defense, snap after snap after snap, no matter what the offense does. So they'll have some automatic checks.
With the 7 sacks that Jaylen took, did you see like a recurring pattern?
They're all unique because you have to look at each play as a separate play. But the thing is we have been over this. And it's not really at this point, certainly not this year, going to change. Some of them are on Jaylen. Some of them are obviously on the fact that the defense, plays the routes well. So like for instance, the Fisk sack, which I think might have been the first sack of the game. I forget exactly when it was, but I think it was the first sack of the game. And that was on Jaylen. I mean, they ran a basic route concept, and he was looking right there to that side. They basically ran what we call curl flat. It was Barkley on the flat or a swing route, and it was Dotson on a curl route. Either one was available within timing. You're either throwing it to Barkley right away because he had gone in motion and emptied out of the backfield, and then Dotson was open on the curl route. So, again, these are hard questions to answer because I don't know what he sees, but each sack is individual. But at the end of the day, this is just who he is as a player. But I do want to say this because I give this a lot of thought, not only about the Eagles, but about all the teams that I watch. I try to think the game through. What every coach wants on offense are explosive plays. The Eagles are not getting them out of the pass game, but they are getting them. So we can't lose sight of that. I mean, they had 3 touchdowns in this game of 44 or more yards. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL. So, we all sit here and I've said it, we've all said it. I've heard a lot of smart people say that, gee, I don't know if the Eagles, can win playing the way they are. But you know what? They're 16-3. They're going into the NFC Championship game at home. So whether they win or lose, if they win Sunday, they'd be 17-3 this season. The worst they could be is 17-4 this year.
It seems our teams playing more games with them? Do you see on tape that they're struggling with communication on the O-line?
This week was really hard because of the weather, because they had some dominant snaps in this game, and they also had some snaps where it was clear that the footing was a problem. So, I don't think the offensive line, quite frankly, has been an issue. I think it's a dominant feature of their team. They pretty much control the pace and tempo of games. And that's another important piece, which is what, that I think is absolutely critical to why they win, because they control games. The fact that, the pass game is not, what we probably all love it to be, why it doesn't seem to be, it's not a losing factor. Let's put it that way.
This is a good question, Ryan. It's a little early for this question, but I'm going to ask it and we'll follow up on it. Could Jalen Hunt, Greg, develop into a full-time starter based on the tape and athletic abilities?
The short answer is yes. Well, first of all, he's an outstanding athlete. He's about 6'4", 255. I think that's what he was at the combine. And you can just see that he has a feel for how to use his hands, how to keep his feet clean. He's had some really strong plays against the run. He still needs work as a pass rusher, but there's no question in my mind that with further development, further coaching, that he can develop into a full-time edge player. No question.
So my question is, for a third matchup, especially of this magnitude, how hard is it to game plan, I guess, given, like I said, the third time that you've seen this team?
No one's reinventing the wheel in a week, but the teams know each other really well. Plus, you got to remember a couple of things. Dan Quinn's been coaching in this league for a long time. Vic Fangio's been coaching in this league for a long time. Kellen Moore's been coaching in this league for a long time. Everybody knows Kingsbury's offense. So one thing I actually learned about this from a coach who's a good friend of mine that coached in the NFL for 35 years. And he said, coaches coach against coaches. And I actually heard Bill Belichick in our Inside the NFL show, because he's in our building every week, talk, when on that show, when he was talking with, Ryan Clark and Chad Johnson about who's the most important player on offense. And he said, it's the offensive coordinator. Who's the most important player on defense? It's the defensive coordinator. Because ultimately, for the most part, what you're going to get. Is every once in a while there a changeup? Yes. But 98% of the time, you know what you're going to get.
Have you seen somebody play him this year that we can duplicate to keep him and keep those yards down?
You're talking about Jaden Daniels? Jaden Daniels is different than Jaylen. I mean, first of all, Jaden Daniels is a better passer, and he'll stay in the pocket and kind of read it out more so than Jaylen will. But he's faster. My guess is it's really hard, just like with Lamar. And he's probably the closest to Lamar in the league. It's really hard to understand that in practice. You can make anybody on your scout team, but it's not the same as being in the game. But he's not a runner in the strict sense. I mean, he can run. I mean, if you remember the Week 16 game on that 4th and 11, I believe it was, when he ran for 29 yards. He's just. And it was a play where actually they slid the protection to Jalen Carter and shoved him right out of the way, and a big gap opened, and Daniels just saw it and took off.
Ask one more from our board here from Anthony. What did Greg think happened on those last two drives for the Rams when they moved the ball up and down the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think weather's a factor because it's hard for defensive backs. They're incredibly reactive. The Eagles were very multiple in what they did. It wasn't as if they just sat back. In fact, they blitzed a lot. They played multiple coverages. There were a couple of plays where you could see the corners were just waiting for the receiver because they couldn't move. So they had to wait for the receiver to make his move. And obviously the long pass on the drive that ended, that the Carter sack was on, was just a ridiculous throw and catch. The one to Nakua for, I think, 37 yards. Was that it? That was just one of those plays. The first touchdown in the fourth quarter, the one that went to Parkinson, was kind of an interesting play because that came with just under 3 minutes remaining. It was what we call a 1-by-3 set, meaning the one was the tight end. So we, instead of 3-by-1, we call that 1-by-3. And the Eagles played man, cover one, but Slay stayed at left corner, so he was matched on Parkinson, and Parkinson just got inside of him on a slant route. Slay just got beat. You wouldn't have expected that. It's a tight end. But he just got beat. Sometimes that happens.
It does. Yeah.
But no, the Eagles, I mean, they played. I mean, they were blitzing. They were switching their coverages. you know, what kind of struck me during those two drives was that Stafford was not having any trouble throwing the ball in that weather.